I'd squirreled away every penny of my life in a blue tin, dreaming of my son's future. But when he discovered where my treasure was hidden, the words that came out of his mouth shattered not just my heart, but a lifetime of silent sacrifices. Subscribe to hear stories that can't be forgotten. My hands know every wrinkle in this house. I know the creak of the loose floorboard in the kitchen, the groan the faucet makes when it's about to give out, the smell of damp that creeps up the walls on rainy days. This house isn't big or fancy, but it's mine. Or it was, until he reminded me that I'm just living here now on his dime. I sit in the rocking chair my husband built with his own 2 hands before God called him home. The upholstery is worn, the wood bears scars, but it still rocks me with the same tenderness it did when it soothed my little boy. I remember his weight in my lap, his golden hair stuck to my blouse when he'd fall asleep after nursing. What a sweet child he was. What a different man he's become. The blue tin is tucked away behind the dish towels in the kitchen cupboard. The lid's dented and it smells like old metal, but to me, it was always a sacred vault. For 40 years, penny by penny, bill by bill, I saved the dreams I had for him in there. Every time I went without a new pair of shoes, every time I stretched the soup with extra water to make it last the week, a coin dropped into the tin. I worked before dawn making loaves to sell on the corner. I scrubbed laundry in the sink until my hands bled. I sewed until my eyes burned under the dim glow of the living room lamp. All so he could have what I never had: education, opportunity, a better future. When he left for the big city, I sent him with my blessings and the certainty that if he ever needed anything, I'd be here, with the blue tin, with my love, with everything I had left. But the years flew by like leaves in the wind. The letters grew scarce, then stopped coming altogether. The phone only rang on special occasions, and even then, the conversations were quick, filled with hurry and empty words. "How are you, Mom? Everything okay? Gotta go, I have a meeting." Always a meeting. Always something more important. I waited, patiently as I always did. I watered the plants, sewed for the neighbors, told stories to the kids down the street. I kept the house clean and the food ready, just in case he showed up unannounced. The blue tin sat there, growing slowly, a silent witness to my stubborn faith, until one day he appeared. It wasn't the visit I dreamed of on so many nights. He didn't come with hugs or longing. He came with hard eyes and a smile that didn't reach his heart. He came for something I'd been holding on to for so long, without realizing he'd one day see it as his due, not my gift. The gate creaked differently when he arrived. It was noon. The sun was high, and I was hanging sheets on the line. When I turned and saw his silhouette standing there, my heart almost stopped. How many years had it been since he'd last set foot on this land? 3? 4. Time had changed his face, etched lines around his eyes, thickened his waist. But he was still my boy. "Hi, Mom." The voice was the same, but there was something different in the tone, a distance that wasn't just from time. I dropped the sheets in the basket and ran to him, arms wide, my heart overflowing. But when I hugged him, I felt his body stiffen. His arms brushed against me lightly, as if I were made of broken glass, or as if he didn't really want to touch me. "How are you? How was the drive? Are you hungry? I've got a pot of beans on the stove, just the way you liked them when you were little." The words tumbled out, mixed with tears of joy. I wanted to do everything at once. Hug him, feed him, look closely at his face, etch every detail of that moment into my memory. He looked around as if seeing the house for the first time, or as if it had shrunk since his childhood. His eyes swept over the small living room, the old furniture, the peeling walls I'd always wanted to paint but never had the money for. I realized he was comparing, measuring, judging. "The house is the same." It wasn't a compliment. "The same and waiting for you," I replied, trying to ignore the disapproval in his voice. "Sit down, honey. Let me warm up lunch." He sat at the kitchen table, but he kept fiddling with his phone, his fingers flying across the screen, as if he were somewhere else entirely. I prepared his plate with care, took pains with the presentation, put on the best slices of meat I'd saved in the fridge. When I placed it before him, he barely glanced at it. Thanks, but I'm not too hungry. I ate on the way. But honey, you always love my beans. And look, I made that bacon crumb topping you always asked for. Things change, Mom. He looked up from his phone for the first time since he'd arrived. People change. Tastes change. I felt a pang in my chest, but forced to smile. Of course, of course. You must be used to different food now, right? Fancy restaurant food. He didn't answer, just went back to his phone. The silence grew between us like a poisonous plant. I sat in the chair beside him, my nervous hands playing with my apron. How long are you staying? I can get your room ready. It's all clean, just the way you left it. Actually, Mom, I didn't come to stay. I came to talk to you about something important. The tone of his voice shifted. It became serious, formal, as if he were in one of those meetings he was always called to. My heart tightened. I knew that tone. It was the same one he used when he was little, telling me about some mischief. What kind of talk? I asked, though I already knew I didn't want to hear the answer. It's about money, Mom. The words dropped onto the table like heavy stones. I felt my spine stiffen, an instinctive defense that kicks in when you sense danger. Money. We always came back to money. Even as a child, he'd ask me why we didn't have what other kids had. Why our house was small. Why I couldn't buy the toys he saw on TV. Why I always had to say, "We can't, honey, maybe next month." What money? I asked, even though I knew exactly what he was talking about. Don't play dumb. I know you have money saved. You always did. Even when I was a kid and you said we were struggling, I saw you hiding bills in places around the house. My face flushed. It was true. I always set a little aside, always kept something for emergencies. It was a habit I learned from my mother, who learned it from hers. A poor woman has to have her reserves, or life swallows everything without a trace. I always set a little aside, yes, for necessities, for emergencies, for emergencies. He repeated my words with an irony that cut me. Mom, I'm in a tough spot. I lost a lot of money on bad investments. I need some help. Son, I started, but he cut me off. I know you have this thing about keeping money under the mattress, or in old coffee cans, or wherever. You've always done it, and now I need it. This isn't a request, Mom. It's a necessity. The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't a son asking his mother for help. It was someone collecting a debt, as if I owed him something, as if everything I'd saved, every cent I'd set aside with such sacrifice, was his right, not mine. You're asking for my savings? My voice came out quieter than I intended. I'm saying I need them, and you don't. What does a woman your age need with hoarded money? You have a house, you have food, you have everything you need. This money is just sitting there, not doing anything. Not doing anything. I repeated his words, letting them echo in the kitchen. Son, do you know how hard I worked to save this money? How many early mornings I woke up to bake bread and sell it? How many clothes I went without? How many times I ate just rice and beans so I could put a little away? I know, Mom, and that's exactly why you saved it, right? For the family, for me. Well, the time has come. The time has come. I pushed myself up from the chair, my legs trembling. The time for what? For you to show up here after years without a real hug, without asking how I'm doing, just to take everything I have? He sighed as if I were a stubborn child who didn't understand grown-up matters. You don't get it, Mom. It's for the good of the family. It's an investment. I'm going to multiply this money, and then I'll give it back to you double. And if you can't, I will. But what if you can't? I pressed. He was quiet for a moment, his eyes darting away from mine. You'll have to trust me. Trust. The word hung in the air like cigarette smoke, heavy and uncomfortable. How many times in my life had he asked me to trust him? When he said he was studying for a test, but spent the afternoon playing baseball. When he promised to be home early from a party, but arrived after midnight. when he swore he'd write me every week from the city, but the letters stopped after 2 months. I always trusted. I always believed. I always let things slide. Because it was my nature. Because I was his mother. Because a mother's love has no limits or conditions. But this time, something inside me hesitated. Son, this money, it's all I have. If it goes wrong, what will I do? It won't go wrong, Mom. You need to stop thinking small. I'm talking about opportunities, serious investments. This isn't that time anymore, saving pennies in a cookie tin. The mention of the tin made me blush. How did he know? Had he seen me hiding coins when he was little? Had he discovered my secret and never said anything? You know about the tin? Of course I know. Did you think I was blind? I always saw you coming and going from the kitchen with a secretive look, hiding things in the cupboard. I found it funny, to be honest. A grown woman playing piggy bank. Playing? He thought it was a game. 40 years of deprivation, of sacrifice, of dreams saved cent by cent, and to him, it was a game. It wasn't a game, I murmured. No, Mom, it wasn't. It was you being too worried, too controlling, saving money just to save it without purpose, without a plan. You know the difference between us? I think big. I see opportunities where you only see risks. And where have those opportunities gotten you? If you're here asking your mother for money. He flushed red, his fists clenching on the table. For a moment I saw the little boy who used to throw tantrums when he didn't get his way. I'm going through a difficult time, that's all. It happens to everyone who takes risks, who doesn't stay in their comfort zone. But you wouldn't understand. You've always been too content. Content. The word hit me like a slap. Content was being poor and not complaining. Content was working double shifts to keep the household running. Content was giving up everything so he could have opportunities. If that was contentment, then I was proud to be content. All right, I said, rising from my chair. I'll get the money. The relief on his face was immediate, almost childlike, as if he'd received a Christmas present. I walked to the kitchen cupboard with slow steps. Each step was a farewell to the dreams I'd saved, the plans I'd made, the security I'd built drop by drop. When I took out the blue tin, it felt lighter than it used to. Or maybe I was weaker. I returned to the table and placed the tin in front of him. He opened it with haste, his eyes shining at the sight of the neatly stacked bills in small bundles. He counted quickly, his lips moving silently. Is that all? It's all I have. He shoved the money into his pocket as if it were his by right. Not a thank you, not a smile, not a clear promise of when he'd pay it back. He just took it and put it away. Thanks, Mom, you won't regret this. But I already did. After he left, the house became quieter than ever. I sat in the rocking chair and let the tears fall freely, unhurriedly, like a gentle late afternoon rain. They weren't just tears for the money lost. They were tears for everything that money represented. I remembered the first bill I put in the blue tin. He was 7 years old and had fallen off his bike, hurting his knee. As I cleaned the wound and put on a bandage, he cried, saying he wanted a new bike, that his was too old and ugly. That night, after he fell asleep, I took the coins I'd saved to buy medicine for my backache and put them in the tin. One day, I thought, one day he'll have the bike of his dreams. And he did. At 10 years old, I got an extra cleaning job at a large house downtown. The money I received went straight into the blue tin, along with my savings from 3 months. I bought him the red bicycle he'd seen in the shop window, the one with a real headlight and a horn. The smile on his face when he saw the gift was worth every extra hour I worked, every ache in my back I ignored. But did he remember that? Did he remember the early mornings I spent sewing school uniforms when he outgrew the old ones? The shoes I resoled 3 times to avoid buying new ones? The meals I pretended not to be hungry for, so there would be more food left on his plate? I got up from the chair and went to the bedroom, where I kept a shoebox full of old photographs. I sat on the bed and started flipping through the memories. Him at 2 years old, chubby and smiling on my lap. At 5, proud, showing off his first lost tooth. At 15, serious, in his school uniform on his high school graduation day. In every photo, I was right there beside him, always by his side, smiling proudly, hands resting on his shoulder, eyes shining with love. Where was that love now? When had it morphed into obligation, into demands, into a sense of entitlement? The phone rang, breaking my reverie. It was my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, who had seen my son arriving and wanted to catch up. "So how was the visit? I was so happy when I saw him pull up. It's been ages." "He was here to sort some things out," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's great. Is he staying for a few days?" "No, he's already gone." There was a pause on the other end. Mrs. Henderson had known me for 30 years. She knew my voice, my silences, my sadness. Did something happen? I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to pour out the pain I felt, the feeling of being used, the emptiness where my hope used to reside. But I couldn't. What mother tells others that her own son disappointed her? What mother admits she might have failed in raising him, that maybe she gave too much love and not enough boundaries? "Everything's fine, Mrs. Henderson, just tired. If you need anything, you know where to find me." I hung up the phone and went back to the kitchen. The blue tin was still on the table, empty, like a broken eggshell. I picked it up carefully and examined it. The dented edges, the peeling paint, the marks of use. How many times had I reached for that tin over the years? How many times had I taken money from it for emergencies and then replaced it with sacrifice? I put it back in the cupboard, but this time, in the back, behind the rarely used dish towels. I couldn't bear to see it empty. Not yet. 3 weeks passed with no word. 3 weeks where every ring of the phone made me jump, hoping it was him, telling me how he'd multiplied the money, apologizing for his coldness, promising a longer visit. But the phone rang with credit card offers, with the neighbor asking to borrow sugar, with the doctor confirming an appointment. Never from him. It was on a Tuesday morning that the truth found me, delivered by the person I least expected, a daughter-in-law I'd never met. She appeared at my door like a well-dressed ghost. Impeccable blonde hair, expensive clothes, heels that clicked on the floor like tiny hammers. But her eyes were red, swollen from crying. "Are you his mother?" she asked without introducing herself. "Yes, and you are?" "His wife, ex-wife, actually." She looked around nervously. "Can I come in? We need to talk." I offered her coffee, as I do with all visitors, but she refused. She sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands clasped in her lap, like someone about to deliver bad news. "He told me he came here, that he got money from you." My heart skipped a beat. "He told you?" "He told me and spent it all in one night. At a poker table. He even lost his wedding ring." Her voice trembled with anger and sadness. "It wasn't an investment. It was gambling. It was addiction. It's what he's been doing for 2 years, and what ended our marriage." Her words hit me like punches to the gut. Gambling, addiction, lies, all lies. He had looked me in the eye and lied as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "What do you mean, addiction?" I managed to ask. "He didn't tell you?" "Of course he didn't tell you." She laughed bitterly. "Your son has a serious gambling problem. It started small, sports betting, then online casinos, now private poker games. We lost the house, the car, our savings. I had to move in with my mother with the kids." "Kids," she said, "kids. You have children?" Her face crumpled. "2 girls, twins, 5 years old. Your granddaughters, whom you never met because he was ashamed to say you lived in a simple house, that you were an uneducated woman." The world spun around me. Granddaughters. I had 5-year-old granddaughters I didn't know existed. 2 little girls I could have spoiled, for whom I could have made rag dolls, with whom I could have planted flowers in the yard. Did he say that? That he was ashamed of me? He said worse. He said you were provincial, that you didn't fit the image he wanted to project. When the girls asked about their paternal grandmother, he told them you were already dead. Dead. To my own granddaughters, I was dead. Buried not in a grave, but in my own son's shame. Why did you come to tell me this? I asked, though part of me dreaded the answer. Because he's going to come back. When he runs out of the money he got from you, he'll invent another lie and ask for more. That's what he does. That's what he's always done. And I couldn't let you be fooled again. She stood up to leave, but paused at the door. The girls, they'd like to meet their real grandmother. If you'd like, I can bring them over sometime. After she left, I sat on the living room floor and cried like I hadn't cried since my husband's funeral. I cried for the granddaughter I never knew, for the lost years, for the lies my son had spread about me. But mostly, I cried because even knowing everything, a part of me still wanted to forgive him. He returned on a rainy Thursday, 2 months later. He arrived soaked in rumpled clothes with deep circles under his eyes. He was no longer the well-dressed man who had appeared the first time. He was someone broken, desperate, dangerous in his own desperation. He didn't wait for me to invite him in. He walked right past me and collapsed on the sofa, his hands trembling, his eyes avoiding mine. I need more money, Mom. Straight to the point. No fake hugs, no asking about my health, no pretense, just raw, desperate need. I don't have any more money to give you, I replied, standing over him. Yes, you do. You always do. I know you hide money in different places around the house. It can be a little, but I'll take anything. I've already given you everything I had. I don't believe you. He stood up abruptly, starting to pace the room like a caged animal. You were always paranoid about money, always hiding it in different spots. You must have more. And if I did, why should I give it to you? He stopped pacing and looked at me for the first time since he'd arrived. In his eyes, there was something I'd never seen before. A dangerous coldness, a willingness to hurt that chilled me to the bone. Because I'm your son. Because you owe me. I owe you? The words came out louder than I intended. What exactly do I owe you? Everything. You brought me into this world without asking if I wanted to come. You raised me in a poor house, a limited life, with no opportunities. You owe me compensation for that. Compensation. I repeated the word, feeling its bitter weight in my mouth. You want compensation for having a mother who loved you, who worked day and night to give you the best she could, who gave up everything for you. Gave up everything? He laughed, a harsh, cruel sound. You didn't give up anything because you had nothing to give up. You did the bare minimum a mother should do. And even then, you messed it up. The slap came out before I could think. My hand moved on its own, connecting with his face in a sharp crack that echoed through the entire house. We both froze, my hand still in the air, him with a red mark on his cheek. Don't you dare, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Don't you dare say I messed it up. Not after finding out you hid 2 granddaughters from me for 5 years. Not after knowing you told them I was dead. His face turned ashen. Who told you that? Your ex-wife came here, told me everything. The gambling addiction, the lies, the shame you felt about me. Each word was a jab I delivered with surgical precision. She told me you lost in one night the money I spent 40 years saving. She had no right. She had every right. Someone needed to tell me the truth, since my own son wasn't capable. He slumped back onto the couch, hands covering his face. When he spoke, his voice was broken. I have a problem, Mom. I know I do. But I can fix it. I just need a chance, some money to start over. No. The word came out firm, without hesitation. Please. No. You don't understand. These people are not to be trifled with. If I don't pay, they'll hurt me. Then you should have thought of that before you gambled what wasn't yours. He looked at me with pure hatred. You're not my mother. A real mother would help her son in a time like this. A real mother wouldn't let her son get to this point. And if he did, she wouldn't keep giving him money to sink himself even further. So it's decided. He stood up. his voice laced with a coldness that sent a shiver down my spine. "You've made your choice. I hope you're happy with it." He left the house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I knew he'd be back. I knew he'd try again with other lies, other manipulations. But I also knew that for the first time in my life, I had said no to my son, and I didn't regret it. Life went on at a slower pace after that day. I went back to my usual routine, waking up early, watering the plants, sewing for the neighbors, preparing the simple meals that were enough for one person. But there was a difference, a strange lightness, as if I had lifted a weight from my shoulders that I had carried for so long without realizing it. It was on one of those quiet mornings that she appeared at my door again. But this time, she wasn't alone. 2 little girls were hiding behind her legs, curious but shy, peeking out from under her skirt like frightened little birds. They had their father's curly hair, but their light, sweet eyes were different. They were eyes that still knew how to smile. I said I'd be back. My daughter-in-law said, "If you want to meet them." "I do." The word came out before I even finished thinking. I knelt on the floor, bringing myself to the girls' level. They looked at me with curiosity mixed with apprehension, as if they didn't quite know what to do with this unknown lady staring at them with tears in her eyes. "Hello, girls," I said softly. "I'm your grandma." The younger of the two, brave as only a child can be, took a step forward. "Daddy said Grandma went to heaven." "No, my dear. Grandma is right here, always has been." The older one remained more cautious but asked, "Why are you crying?" "Because I'm so happy to meet you. I've wanted to know what my granddaughters were like for a long time." I invited them in. The house, which had seemed so empty to me lately, suddenly filled with life. They ran around the living room, explored every corner, asked a million questions about everything. "Why do you have so many plants? Who made this rocking chair? Can I see your room?" I prepared a simple snack, bread and butter, lemonade, cookies I had made the day before. They ate with gusto, getting their fingers sticky, laughing loudly. How long had it been since I'd heard a child's laughter in this house? "Grandma, can you make a rag doll?" the younger one asked. "Yes, I can." "Why?" "Because mine broke, and Mommy said she doesn't have money to buy another one." I looked at my daughter-in-law over the girls' heads. She blushed, embarrassed. "Things have been tough since I separated," she explained. "We're living with my mother. I work all day. There's barely enough for the basics. And him? He doesn't help at all. He disappeared. After you refused to give him more money, he vanished. He doesn't answer phone calls. He hasn't shown up since." The girls ask about their father, but I don't know what to say. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. Anger at him for abandoning his own daughters. Sadness from knowing that deep down, I always knew he was capable of this. "He was always like this," I murmured. "When things got tough, he'd run. Even as a child, he'd rather hide than face the consequences." "It's not your fault," my daughter-in-law said, touching my hand. "It took me a while to understand, but we're not to blame for other people's mistakes. Neither you nor I. We spent the whole afternoon together. I taught the girls to plant seeds in the backyard. They helped me water the plants. I told them old stories my mother used to tell me. When it was time to leave, they didn't want to go. "Can I come back tomorrow, Grandma?" "You can come back any time you want." After they left, the house fell silent again, but it was a different silence. It was no longer the emptiness of loneliness. It was the pause between visits, the interval between laughs. It was a silence full of promise. That night, I took the blue tin out of the closet where I had hidden it. It was empty, but it no longer looked like a coffin of dead dreams. It looked like a seed waiting to sprout again. I started making plans, small, humble, but real. With the money from my sewing, I'd buy thread and fabric to make dolls for the girls. I'd plant more vegetables in the yard to share with them. I'd save coin by coin to buy school supplies when the time came. This time, I'd save for someone who truly deserved it. For someone who saw me not as an obligation or a source of money, but as Grandma. For someone whose hugs weren't a burden but a safe harbor. The blue tin would have a new life, and so would I. 6 months passed. 6 months of irregular visits from my granddaughters, of afternoons filled with games and stories, of a routine that finally made sense. The blue tin had coins again, not many, but enough for the little dreams that now filled my life. It was on a Saturday morning, as the girls and I were in the backyard picking tomatoes, that he appeared. He looked worse than the last time, thinner, bearded, in dirty clothes, with a stench that announced him before he even arrived. He stumbled through the gate as if he were sick, his eyes vacant, his hands shaking. The girls scurried behind me, scared. The youngest started to cry. "Daddy?" the older one whispered. He looked at his daughters as if he didn't recognize them immediately. Then slowly a crooked smile spread across his face. "My princesses, Daddy missed you so much." "I have rights." I saw his expression crumble, the mask of false cheer falling away. "I just need some money to get myself together. Then I'll be back to normal. From what I earn, honestly. I'm scared of Daddy." "Like you've never made mistakes. I understand you embarrassed me so much that you told your own daughters I was dead." His shoulders slumped, his head dropped, and for the first time in a long time, I saw real tears in his eyes. "I didn't want to be like this," he whispered. "I didn't want them to see me like this." When he finally looked up, there was something different in his eyes, a clarity I hadn't seen in years. "The girls, are they okay?" "But as their father, not as a beggar. When I can be the dad you deserve. But forgiveness is only meaningful if there's change." The sun still shone. The tomatoes were still sweet. Grandma was still here. That night, after my daughter-in-law picked up the girls and the house returned to silence, I sat in my rocking chair with the blue tin in my lap. It had a few coins in it now, not many, but each one represented something different than before. They were no longer coins of sacrifice and deprivation. They were coins of purpose. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The years of silent dedication, the disappointments, the painful discoveries, the courage to say no. I thought about the granddaughters I gained when I thought I had lost everything, about the love that bloomed when I thought my heart had dried up. Life taught me that sometimes we lose the people we love most, not because we stop loving them, but because they get lost from themselves. And in those moments, the most loving thing we can do is not feed their perdition with our own need to love. I learned that being a mother isn't about giving your child everything they ask for. It's about giving them what they need, even when they don't understand it, even when it hurts us more than it hurts them. I learned that true love sometimes has to look like toughness, and that saying no can be the greatest act of love we offer. My blue tin no longer held the dreams of a woman who negated herself for others. She held on to her grandmother's dreams, dreams of someone who discovered they still had seeds to plant, flowers to grow, a purpose to fulfill, and love to give, all without losing themselves in the process. The hands that once trembled with fear, refusing to lend money to her own son, now moved with a steady grace, sewing rag dolls, tending the vegetable patch, and baking cookies for the sound of childish laughter. These hands had learned that caring isn't about sacrificing yourself until you disappear. It's about staying whole so you can offer something genuine. I don't know if my son will come back different. I don't know if he can overcome the demons he chose to feed. But I do know that if he returns, he'll find a different mother. A mother who learned to love without losing herself, to care without erasing herself, to give without emptying herself. And if he doesn't return, he'll find 2 daughters who grew up knowing they are unconditionally loved by a grandmother who taught them that true family isn't about who uses us, but who sees us. It's not about who demands from us, but who celebrates us. It's not about who shames us, but who is proud of us. The blue tin is still in the kitchen cupboard, but now it holds more than just money. It holds proof that it's never too late to start over, that we're never too old to learn, and that true love sometimes needs the courage to protect itself. And every night, before I sleep, I give thanks for discovering that I am not a burden. I am a root, and roots, even when tested by storms, burrow deeper into the earth to support the entire tree. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and share it so that more people can hear what should never be forgotten. What would you do in this mother's place? Comment below and help keep alive the stories that deserve to be remembered.